Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 1 of the anime series Kuzu no Honkai, or Scum's Wish. Heavily endearing title, that is, and this was one of those series that stuck out to me looking at the winter 2016-2017 upcoming releases for its synopsis alone. I was absolutely captivated and compelled by it. I'd seen no character art really apart from a poster that effectively looked like it had been taken from the source manga or whatever it is, and so I really didn't know what the look, the vibe, the feel of this particular show was going to be, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that I was that engrossed in it, as I would happen to be, for an episode that I largely feel like there's not really a hell of a lot to talk about after watching that doesn't start bridging the gap of just being a recap. Going back to that synopsis, this first episode thoroughly delivers on the promise of what that synopsis said this series was going to be about. You're following around two main characters, Hanabi and Mugi respectively, female and male, and they are both in this sort of dilemma of unrequited love with these people that they have grown up with or know. In the case of Hanabi, it's this sort of Oni-chan, elderly brother kind of person who's a friend of her family, and she's known him all her life, and she's, feeling very much for him. And I think it's really interesting, by the way, that the seiyuu for this character is someone who also voiced Reina from Hibike Euphonium, who was kind of going through that with Taki-sensei, this unrequited love, lusting after a friend of the family who's also a teacher and all that kind of stuff. And the hair's even kind of sort of bluish purple, so take what you will from that. But, the whole idea is she has this love and affection for this person who never shows any sort of, reaction to that to her, any reciprocation, And very similarly, with the case of Mugi, this sort of blonde-haired guy, he is very much infatuated and in love with this former senpai, this woman who at one point in his past had been his tutor, and now both of these people are respectively teachers in their school. And so you kind of get a little backstory, a little flashback of how Hanabi and Mugi ended up finding and running into each other. And now they have born out of this unrequited love, a relationship with each other that is kind of sort of friends with benefits, but not quite. It's going to be everything but the sex, and they're going to be very much, falling into each other's arms and supporting each other and being there for each other in the absence of being able to be with the people they really want to be with. And that's very much what the synopsis explained this show was meant to be. And so, it kind of is like the buck stops there. I don't really know what else to say about it, except for the fact that it thoroughly delivered and then some on all of the feelings and emotions and thoughts one might go through in that sort of predicament. We've all had that case where we've been, either lusted after someone or in love, thinking we're in love with someone, and it was unrequited. Whether we couldn't bring it up to them or, we did and we were rejected and all this stuff, the idea of heartbreak and that self-loathing and everything that is, is surrounding and that's born out of that whole scenario is on display in this particular episode and is going to be tentatively throughout the course of the series. Now, I'm somebody who, when the episode is over and we've seen them getting very intimate, Hanabi and Mugi, or Hana and Mugi, it's one of those things where it's like, well, I'm kind of desperately wishing we could see them realize that their unrequited love for other people is never, they're never going to fulfill themselves for that. And maybe in that absence, they will start to realize, but we have something here with each other, and maybe we can make the most of that. Maybe they will find those feelings becoming genuine for each other and grow, and everything will be great in the world and everything like that. But the real world admittedly doesn't play out that way for the most part. And so I can only assume heartbreak and gut-stabbing emotional pain and torrential floods of emotion are meant to ensue. I've seen some people talking about the episode already saying that the characters are wholly unlikable, and I disagree. It's kind of the same argument I remember hearing going back to Final Fantasy VIII with the character of Squall Leonhardt, who is very self-reserved and very quiet and kind of a dick to other people because he didn't want to get too emotionally invested in them for fear of losing his family, something he suffered earlier in life, and it scarred him. He carried it throughout the rest of his life. And I could relate to that, having lost my parents very early on in life, starting with my dad, 5 years later my mother, having to take guardianship of my sister. I could really relate to that whole plight of feeling sort of alone in the world and having to take on the responsibilities of an adult as a child or a teenager. And so to me, the Squall Leonhardt character, whereas other people were calling him a dick and saying he was unlikable, he was very sort of relatable to me, and I liked him that much more for it. And I kind of feel similarly with this series that Hana and Mugi, you know, I can kind of relate to what they're going through, and the idea of finding not only pleasure but support and sort of a safety net in each other, in each other's arms, for lack of having the people they truly want. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see, because there are other characters that feature in the OP, and I loved the OP, by the way. I thought it was pretty kick-ass for the sort of melancholy overall and slightly depressive emotions and feelings and vibes you're getting from the episode on whole. And I was actually a little surprised by the sort of intimate sequence that was thrown in there, the sex sequence. I was wondering how far that was going to go, because of course there is a level of uncomfortability. You're really in a sort of intimate moment, a vulnerable moment with these characters, and she kind of has made the move on him, and he's going along with it. You know, he makes some comment like, you know, do you want to stop? Are you sure you want to go through with this? And she's wondering, you know, how much impetus he has, how much drive he has to actually go along with it. I'm thinking he's a guy. He's probably got like very little that he needs provocation-wise to go along with it. Even if you are not the one he is truly infatuated with, you're going to be an outlet, and he's going to be your outlet in a very similar fashion, and they're imagining their other lovers and everything like that. And the one sort of segment other than that intimacy that gave me pause was she actually is pretty cruel in turning someone down who I guess confessed to her or asked her out or something like that, and she has some offhanded comment about it, you know, the most loathsome of things is having to be constantly faced with someone's infatuation with you when you don't feel that way about them at all. And so it's kind of funny, because she then says something like boomerang, and it's that idea of, here is this, you know, sort of emotion, this qualm and quandary of herself, of her being, of being in love with someone, not having that reciprocated, you know, going with someone else and turning to someone else who she really doesn't feel for, at least not yet. If that could ever end up blossoming remains to be seen. And how that is a circular thing. It's like the circle of life, in a sense, from a, you know, relationship dynamic standpoint. And it's almost like the karmic thing. You know, karma will bite you in the ass if you're kind of an asshole in life. At least seems to be the case on occasion. Sometimes it seems karma, you know, misses the directive and goes after people who aren't deserving sometimes as well. But it's going to be interesting to see, you know, for an episode that I felt largely delivered on what the synopsis promised, and that there wasn't much to really say about it. Emotional wise, it feels like it's going to be a torrential flood of ups and downs, and it's going to be interesting to see where these other characters come in and out of play. I have seen someone hinting around to the idea that you're going to find these characters unlikable. Again, I like them for the most part, because I feel like I can relate to certain aspects of how they are around each other and why they were taking comfort in each other in that absence of the love they so wish they had. But, you know, maybe they will become unlikable. I mean, that cold-heartedness Hanabi showed at turning that guy down, it does give you pause, but, you know, in an empathetic way, I can really kind of understand why she was provoked to say that, and why she was feeling so cold-hearted in that moment, because of her plight. She is in love, and she will never see that love fulfilled, at least in the moment. She doesn't feel like she ever will, and so she's kind of got the claws out, and she's scathing toward anyone who wants to fill that void, apart from Mugi, who she has accepted in that sort of you know, safety net relationship dynamic that they've built for themselves. It'll be interesting to see how much further down the rabbit hole the relationship has gone back and forth between Mugi and his love interest, this teacher woman, and whether or not, you know, the Oni-chan in Hanabi's case and this teacher are going to actually align together, and what will ensue from that the closer they get. How much more will the worlds of Hanabi and Mugi be rocked as a result of it remains to be seen. I will not probably be, you know, covering this unless, you know, some great amount of surprising stuff happens. I don't really see myself covering this one episodically, but it is a top contender for one that I will watch all the way through to completion and then come back and talk about after the fact in a sort of overview, finale review format, depending on how the story goes. And one other footnote about the animation, I thought the animation was, fairly decent. It kind of really reminded me, harkened back to Your Lie in April, which was a series I watched and did a full series review of in the last few months. And just the character design, the hair color, everything like that, certain aspects of some of the way the characters look and the vibe kind of reminded me of that series. As I say again, the seiyuu of Hanabi is actually the same one who voiced Reina from Hibike Euphonium. She also voiced Chaika Trebent from Hitsugi no Chaika, which is cool. I love running into seiyus. I'm not somebody who is very sort of, memorizing of voice actresses or actors and things of that sort, directors, studios. I don't follow a lot of that stuff to the letter. Just I kind of want to check anime out and see how it makes me feel. I can't really go much as when it comes to film directors. Just because I like a director's work doesn't mean I'm going to like every movie they ever do. If I like E.T., I'm not going to necessarily like, something else Steven Spielberg has put out there. So I don't really follow it that way. I don't really follow seiyu's voice actors and actresses. But when I see them reoccurring, I always love that. It always sort of warms my heart to be like, oh, I recognize that voice, and that's so cool. Especially with the fact that this Hanabi character is kinda, in a much more dramatic sense, cut from the same cloth as the Reina character from Hibike. And I think, in fact, I read the teacher, the seiyuu for the teacher voiced Shinobu from Amamatui Nezuma. So I knew I recognized that voice as well. And she also did a voice in Kokoro Connect, which was a series I covered in sort of episodic, bi-weekly episodic videos. I think there's like 3 of them comprising the whole series as one long, on again, off again review. I mean, there's not really much else to say about this first episode. I don't plan, as I say, to be covering it episodically, but it's definitely a highfalutin contender to come back and talk about after the fact. If it stays on par like this, unless it really wows me and I'm really compelled to come on after every episode, I probably won't be doing that, and we'll save it for the end. If by the end I still feel as strongly that this one thoroughly delivered from beginning to end as this first episode did. So otherwise, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've seen episode 1 of Kuzu no Honkai, or Scum's Wish, what a title, and what you thought of the episode. Was it your taste? Was it, a good representation of the source material? That kind of thing. If you're familiar with it, if it's your first time encountering it, love it, hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. And so, yeah. Otherwise, it'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.